My name is Clara Whitman, and I'm telling this story in my own words because for a long time, no one listened to them. I grew up believing that if you worked hard and stayed honest, things would turn out fair. I learned later that families don't always follow fairness. Sometimes they follow comfort, control, and old ideas that leave no space for someone like me. I was born and raised in a quiet neighborhood in Dayton, a modest city where everyone seemed to know everyone else. Our house stood on Maple Ridge Street, a two-story home with cream-colored walls and a narrow porch. My mother, Eleanor, kept the house spotless. My father, George, cared deeply about rules, schedules, and respect. He believed a good family worked like a system, and no one should step outside it. Then there was my younger brother, Lucas. He was charming, easygoing, and always knew how to say the right thing. My parents adore him. He stayed close, asked for advice, and leaned on them for help. I noticed early on that this made them feel important. I didn't blame Lucas for it, but I also knew I wasn't built the same way. From the time I was a teenager, I wanted independence. I worked after school, saved my money, and dreamed of standing on my own feet. While other girls talked about settling down early, I talked about jobs, travel, and owning my own place. My parents called it stubbornness. I called it breathing. After college, I moved out with no help from anyone. I rented a small apartment, worked long hours, and lived carefully. I counted every dollar. I didn't complain. I didn't ask my parents for money, even when things were tight. I thought they would be proud of me for that. Instead, they grew distant, like my independence made them uncomfortable. When I turned 30, I did something that mattered deeply to me. I bought my first house. It wasn't big or fancy, but it was mine. A small blue house on Hollow Creek Road, with a quiet backyard and a kitchen filled with light. I paid $210,000, every dollar earned through years of work and saving. The day I signed the papers, I cried in my car, not from stress, but from pride. I invited my parents and Lucas to see it. I cleaned every corner and cooked dinner myself. I wanted to share my joy with them. My mother smiled politely, but her eyes wandered. My father walked through the rooms with his hands behind his back, saying very little. Lucas joked about how much work a house was and laughed it off. At dinner, my father finally spoke. He said I was too focused on doing everything alone. He said family was about sticking together, not proving something. His words felt heavy, like a quiet warning. I realized then that my success didn't bring us closer. It pushed us further apart. That night, after they left, I stood alone in my living room. The walls were bare, the floor still smelled new, and the silence was mine. I didn't know it then, but this house would become more than a home. It would become the place where I learned that independence has a cost, and that sometimes the people who should cheer for you are the ones most threatened by your strength. The conversation happened on a Sunday afternoon, the kind of day that looks peaceful from the outside, but leaves marks that never fade. My mother asked me to come over, saying she wanted a family talk. Her voice sounded careful, too careful, and something in my chest tightened the moment I hung up the phone. Their house in Cedar Falls looked the same as always, neatly trimmed lawn, clean windows, and a quiet stillness that made everything feel staged. When I walked inside, I saw Lucas sitting in the living room, relaxed, his arm draped over the back of the couch like he belonged there completely. My father, George, stood near the window, hands folded behind his back. My mother, Eleanor, motioned for me to sit. No one offered coffee. No one asked how I was doing. My father began speaking without looking at me. He said they had been thinking about the future and about what was best for the family. He spoke slowly, carefully choosing his words, like a man reading from a script he had practiced many times. My mother nodded along, her lips pressed into a thin line. Lucas stayed silent, staring at the floor. Then my father said they had finalized their will. The room felt suddenly smaller. My heartbeat was loud in my ears. He explained that they had decided to leave everything to Lucas, the house, their savings, and the accounts they had built over decades. He said the total value was around $600,000, but the number barely registered. What I heard was that I was not included at all. My mother finally looked at me and said, "You don't need it. You're independent. You always have been." Her words landed harder than any insult. I wanted to tell her that independence wasn't rejection of family, that strength didn't mean lack of feeling. But my throat closed up. Lucas still hadn't said a word. He didn't defend me. He didn't object. He just sat there, silent and safe. I asked one question, quietly, because raising my voice felt pointless. I asked if I had done something wrong. My father sighed and said this wasn't about right or wrong. It was about who would use the money wisely and stay close. I understood then that love, in their eyes, came with conditions I refused to meet. I left shortly after. No one walked me to the door. When I got home, I sat in my car for a long time before going inside. The sky was dark, and the streetlights glowed softly along Hollow Creek Road. Inside my house, everything was quiet. I took off my coat, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the wall. I didn't cry right away. I felt hollow, like something essential had been removed without warning. In the weeks that followed, the silence grew. I stopped calling first. They didn't call at all. Holidays came and went. Cards stopped arriving. I saw pictures of my parents and Lucas together online, smiling, celebrating, living as if I had never existed. It hurt, but it also clarified something painful and important. I realized that my place in the family had always been conditional. I was valued when I followed expectations and quietly set aside when I didn't. Being written out of the will wasn't just about money. It was confirmation that my independence had a price. So, I focused on my life. I worked longer hours, saved more, and poured myself into my home. I painted walls, fixed broken cabinets, and made the space truly mine. Each small improvement felt like reclaiming something I had lost. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. If I was going to stand alone, I would stand strong. Life has a way of circling back when you least expect it. By the time this chapter of my life began, I had gone years without hearing my parents' voices. I knew nothing about their daily lives except what little I heard through distant relatives or passing comments online. I focused on my work, my home, and the quiet routine I had built for myself. I told myself I had made peace with being pushed aside. I believed it until the night someone knocked on my door. It was late autumn, and the air outside had turned sharp and cold. I was standing in my kitchen, warming leftovers and thinking about nothing important when the knock came. It wasn't loud, just firm and careful, as if whoever stood there wasn't sure they were welcome. I remember hesitating before opening the door, a strange feeling settling in my chest. When I opened it, I froze. My parents stood on my porch, looking smaller than I remembered. My mother's coat hung loosely on her shoulders, and her hair had gone almost completely gray. My father leaned heavily on a cane I had never seen before. For a moment, none of us spoke. The past rushed back all at once, and I felt like the years had folded in on themselves. My mother broke the silence first. She said my name like it was fragile, like she was afraid it might crack if she spoke it too loudly. She asked if they could come in. Her voice trembled, and despite everything, I stepped aside and let them enter. They sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I had once cried alone after learning I had been written out of their will. I poured them tea, my hand steady even though my heart wasn't. My father stared down at the cup, his shoulders slumped. He looked tired in a way that went deeper than age. That was when they told me what had happened. Lucas had taken control of everything after they signed the will. At first, things seemed fine. He promised to manage their money, said he would take care of them. Then the promises faded. He sold their house in Cedar Falls, drained their savings, and claimed he needed the money for investments. The total he took was close to $90,000. After that, he stopped calling. Then he stopped answering altogether. My mother's voice broke as she admitted they had nowhere to go. They had been staying with friends, moving from one short-term solution to another. Finally, they came to me. "We were wrong," my father said quietly. It was the first apology I had ever heard from him. I listened without interrupting. I didn't feel angry in the way I once thought I would. I felt tired. Sad. Clear. I understood now that their visit wasn't about repairing our relationship. It was about survival. I helped them, but on my terms. I found them a small apartment not far from my house. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and safe. I paid the deposit and first month's rent, $1,200, without hesitation. I helped them set up utilities and brought groceries by once a week. I did what felt right, not what felt expected. When my mother asked if they could move in with me, I said no. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain too much. I simply said I couldn't do that. My father looked at me for a long time and nodded. I think in that moment, he finally understood something he never had before, that my independence wasn't rebellion. It was protection. After that night, everything changed, but not in the way stories usually promise. We didn't suddenly become close. We didn't heal all old wounds. We spoke occasionally, carefully, like people learning a new language. Lucas never reached out. Not once. As winter approached, I felt a restlessness growing inside me. Helping my parents had reopened old feelings I thought I had buried. I realized that staying where I was meant staying close to a past I had worked hard to survive. I began thinking about leaving, about starting somewhere new where my choices didn't echo with old expectations. That knock on my door didn't bring closure. It brought clarity. I understood then that I could care without sacrificing myself. And for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future that didn't include explaining who I was or apologizing for it. After my parents showed up at my door, something inside me quietly shifted. I went back to my routines, but they no longer felt solid. Every room in my house began to feel like a memory instead of a shelter. I had built this place to protect my peace, yet now it held echoes of old wounds I didn't choose to reopen. I knew then that staying wasn't strength anymore. It was habit. I spent many evenings sitting alone in my living room, listening to the soft hum of the heater and watching shadows move across the walls. This house on Hollow Creek Road had been my victory. I bought it with my own money, fixed it with my own hands, and healed inside it. But I also learned that even safe places can become heavy when they hold too much history. Letting go didn't mean failure. It meant making room. The decision to sell wasn't rushed. I spoke to an agent, cleaned every corner, and painted over the last few scuffs on the walls. When the listing went live, I felt strangely calm. Within weeks, an offer came in for $340,000. I accepted without negotiating. The number mattered less than what it represented. Freedom without explanation. I told my parents after the papers were signed. My mother sounded surprised, even scared. She asked where I would go. I told her I was moving to Boulder, in another state, somewhere quieter and farther from the life that shaped me without asking my permission. My father didn't try to stop me. He only said he hoped I would be happy. That was enough. Packing was simple. I didn't keep much that reminded me of who I used to be. I donated furniture, boxed up only what mattered, and left behind the weight of expectations that never belonged to me. On my last night in the house, I slept on a mattress on the floor and listened to the rain tap against the windows. I wasn't sad. I was ready. In Boulder, I bought a smaller home near the edge of town. It had wide windows, clean air, and no memories attached to it. I paid in cash and walked out with the keys in my hand, feeling lighter than I had in years. There was no one to impress here, no history to correct, no role to perform. I was simply myself. I settled into a new routine: morning walks, quiet workdays, evenings on the porch watching the sky change color. I learned that peace doesn't arrive loudly. It shows up gently when you stop fighting to be understood by people who never tried to listen. My parents still call sometimes. The conversations are short and careful. They ask about the weather. I ask about their health. We don't revisit the past. Lucas never reached out, and I no longer wonder if he will. Some answers come through silence. Looking back, I see the truth clearly now. Being cut out of the will didn't break me. It revealed me. It showed me how capable I was without approval, how strong I had become without support. I learned that independence isn't loneliness, it's choice. I sold a house, but I gained a life that finally fits. And for the first time, I don't feel like I'm running away. I feel like I arrived.